talking then about potential staying. Of course, Trent Alexander-Arnold. Let's talk about him a little bit because, of course, we was meant to be doing a video earlier on in the week about Trent and about where's he going to be staying. Of course, obviously scored the winning goal against Leicester, which of course has put Liverpool on course to win our 20th league title. And of course, there's been plenty to say today. Of course, obviously he had the photo with Mo Salah, which is tradition now. Of course, for every match winner or every top game performer. Of course, it didn't happen on Sunday, but in also saying that, of course, today it did happen, and a lot was made about it, wasn't it? There was talks of could he stay now? Of course, obviously there's not been any real conversation around it. I think Adidas as well also put eyes emojis on Mo Salah's post earlier on, which caused a lot of conversation. And I think the big talking point has been, certainly the last few days, will Liverpool, or do Liverpool have a chance in Trent staying? Now, the report today was Liverpool have not given up hope of re-signing him. Liverpool are not yet done, in terms of trying to convince him to stay. And I look at it and I'm like, I still think he's going to leave. I do still sadly think Trent is going to leave the club at the end of the season. I think if it gets announced that Liverpool are league champions by the end of the weekend, I think maybe next week it might get announced, or there might be some sort of confirmation that Trent is going to be going. But what happens if it's a ruse? What happens if Trent ends up staying? Because it would break the internet, and it would, absolutely it would, because that's all you've had from Fabrizio Romano, from not so much other reporters, but certainly Fabrizio Romano the last couple of days, kind of backtracking a little bit, in terms of not on the report and not anything they've said, but in terms of 1 minute, they'll say that, oh, the final details are getting sorted. Verbally, Real Madrid think he's a Real Madrid player next season. But then you'll also turn around and go, oh, like there's no final decision made by Trent yet. And it's kind of like, well, if there's no decision made yet by Trent, then, how do you know that things are in the final stages, kind of? And it's kind of backtracking, really, for what he's saying. But look, if he was to stay, then brilliant. I'd absolutely love it if he was to stay, and continue being a Liverpool player. But I personally, I just think he's going, and I think he wants a new adventure and he wants to go to Real Madrid, and of course play out in Spain, which, again, I have my own opinions on that. I have my own opinions with Trent. You look at Van Dijk, you look at Salah, they are cemented now, in Liverpool's legacy. They are Liverpool legends now forever. You look at Trent, I think a lot of people have had the conversation of, look, you've done what you've done in the past. It's amazing what you've done in the past. But, you could have cemented your legacy at Liverpool and done more things at Liverpool, really. And I think that's kind of the same conversation everyone's having of, or certainly some people of, you look at it, if it was another player, if it wasn't a Scouser, if it was just some random, Argentinian, for example, again, you can understand it to some extent, but because it is a Scouser, I think there's a level of expectation, really, in terms of what you do at the football club and how you leave the club. And I think a lot of people are upset with how Trent has dealt with it and how it's gone this season in terms of the communication, really, between Trent and the fans and so on as well. But look, things might get cleared up sooner rather than later, in terms of what happens anyway. But look, we'll have to wait and see for that anyway. But I do think Trent will leave, and I do think we'll need obviously a replacement. But I just think he will end up leaving at the end of the season, unfortunately.